But today, thousands across this federation are having it hard, even some of us. Mothers can't buy Pampers. Fathers can't buy snacks for their kids, their children to go to school. People willing to work cannot find a minimum wage paying job. People are living in darkness because an uncaring government is cutting off the electricity during a pandemic. Banks are foreclosing on people's home when people can't even find money to buy food. People can't afford medication, blood pressure out of control, diabetes out of control, high rates of strokes and heart attacks and cancers, and difficulty to find treatment. People complain every day that almost a year, for some more than a year, cannot get their severance pay, money that should have been put aside for them. These are the hardships that our people here in St. Kitts and Nevis are facing. And while some people are having it hard, others are living high on the hog. That cannot be fair in a country like ours. That cannot continue. And when you look at the political landscape, one has to mention it, because instead of focusing on the people, political parties are in this squabble to determine who will be the next leader. They don't care about the people. They care about their own advancement, and that is exactly what the St. Kitts Nevis Labour Party does not stand for. We stand for the people, by the people, because we are party of the working class and those who are in the upper class and middle class also. And so there is an attempt, and I must point it out, to disrupt the whole political culture here in St. Kitts and Nevis. As we see leaders want to jump from one party to a next party, undermining a party to gain political power, that has left the people of St. Kitts and Nevis at a disadvantage. And we must say to those who are engaged in this type of activity that the people of St. Kitts and Nevis must not accept this, and we here in the SKNLP must not accept this. Harris is going around saying that he wants a third term. He's a man who undermined the SKNLP. He got everything from the SKNLP. Dr. Douglas gave him everything that could have been given to a child, and yet he undermined him and undermined our organization, and for that he must never be forgiven. And that is why he's now on a rampage saying that he wants 2 terms. But our leader was vilified. 3 terms, sorry. But our leader was vilified. He said that he was a dictator because he stayed more than 2 terms. He said that he was a despot because he stayed more than 2 terms. He said that he was self-centered because he stayed more than 2 terms. He said all manner of evil things against him to bring him down because he said he stayed more than 2 terms. So now, how can the man who ran a whole campaign against his party and the leader that was democratically elected by this party for having spent more than 2 terms now come to you, the people of St. Kitts and Nevis, and say that he must have a 3rd term? Does that make sense? That is because we are dealing with one who is self-centered, selfish, and greedy, and cares nothing about you, the people of St. Kitts and Nevis, cares nothing about you, the people of the SKNLP, cares nothing about the people of PAM, nothing about the people of CCM, nothing about the people of NRP. He cares about himself, and that is what our leader and you, the people of the SKNLP, know, and that is what we must keep on saying to our country and to our people. And so he will not stop. And so I want you to know that he's going to dangle all sorts of things. But you, the comrades, you must stand firm. Remain firm. Remember who you are dealing with. He will try all sorts of things. But I ask you today to stand firm. because your SKNLP has the resolve, the structure, the organization, the history, the know-how to lead our people to a better future. And that is why we are here this afternoon. And let us make no joke about it, that the reason why we are here is that we are setting an example. No other party in the Federation can do this. No other party in this Federation has the depth and the political understanding to carry out exercises like this one this afternoon. What we are doing today, comrade, is that we are reorganizing to some extent, upgrading and advancing. If you have a phone and you don't advance it and upgrade it and update it, your phone will become what? Obsolete. It will not work anymore. And so we are saying that even in the SKNLP, that we must take a moment, a time, when we must reflect on how we do things. We must reflect on our Constitution. And we must ask those hard questions. Is the Constitution as it stands now, is it serving the objective that we have, which is to serve our people in a more modern era? That question has been asked of you and of ourselves as the executive. And the executive is a democratic aspect of our great party. We do not make decisions in isolation. We do not make decisions because you put us as the head and we think that we can do all that we want. We always consult with you, the comrades of our party. And so we would have had a number of meetings. We would have had branch meetings, zonal meetings, caucuses. We would have formed a number of committees that would have done extensive work over the last months since the last general elections and even before. And so what we have today is the culmination of that work, where we will discuss here this afternoon the changes that are proposed. And to all of you who would have been involved in some way with making sure that all that work would have been completed so that we can be here today, I want to say, as the chairman of this party, thank you, thank you, thank you from the bottom of our hearts.
It's real talking, real talk. It's real talking, real talk, yeah.
I Reese. Talk is still real. We still on the corner. Real talk, we gonna touch on some topics.
Yes, guys, back. We are back another beautiful Monday evening. Welcome back. Aaron, what's up, man? What's good with you?
I'm doing well, man. I can't complain at all. You know, have to
That's
give
good.
thanks for
That's good.
life. Give thanks for
That's
life.
good. That's good.
And another week here with our
Indeed,
wonderful
indeed,
audience.
indeed. I know tonight is going to be a night that we're going to be having a conversation with an individual who our audience has been asking for quite some time. And later say better late than never. Dr. Terrance is going to be here with us tonight, and we'll be speaking with Dr. Drew. We'll be learning things about Dr. Drew. Who is Dr. Drew? His upbringing, education, and of course, we have to go into his political aspirations as well. So, it's going to be an interesting evening.
Definitely. I'm excited to talk to the young man. Dr.
Oh,
Drew.
definitely.
I'm really excited to have a conversation with him. He's already here, so we're gonna bring him on screen. Dr. Drew, are you ready for us?
Yes, I'm ready.
All right.
Dr. Drew, how you doing? How you doing?
Hey, I'm doing well, man. I really appreciate being with you guys. Real talk corner.
Yeah.
So it's a pleasure for me to
Thank
be
you.
here.
We appreciate having you here as well. Thank you for accepting our invitation. Thank you.
Definitely. Thank you for accepting our
Yes, and of
invitation.
course you all are very, very welcome. It's a pleasure of mine, as I've said. And I just want to say good night to your audience and those who are listening. that I just learned that people would have asked you all to have me on, and I want to thank them for encouraging you, for giving me the opportunity. So I'm
Definitely,
happy to be
definitely.
all around. Right.
All right. Well,
Right. So,
Dr. Drew, Dr. Drew, like you said, thank you for accepting our invitation. But one of the things that a lot of people would like to know is who is Dr. Drew? How did Dr. Drew come up? Dr. Drew's education. A little bit about Dr. Drew. Help us out there.
right. Yeah, man, I'm happy to share that. Well, basically, just like people of our federation, I was born here, St. Nevis. I grew up in Upper Monkey Hill, St. Peter's. That is where my mother's side of the family is really from. And there I went to the St. Peter's Primary School. Back in those days, we didn't go to much preschool. I started school at 4 years old in the primary school, and then I completed my St. Peter's primary education. After that, I went to the Bastard Junior High School, which is now the Washington Archibald High School. We did 2 years there, and then we were transferred to the Bastard High School, where we did the CXC program. After the CXC program, I went on to sixth form. But back then, we didn't have the college as it is now, Fitzroy Bryan College as it is now. We had sixth form, and I think Navy should have a sixth form still. And after
Yes.
sixth form, yes, I really concentrated on the science, mostly maths and sciences. And then I taught at the Bastille High School, my alma mater, for 2 years, where I taught maths and physics. And after that, I then went to Cuba and I pursued medicine, where I spent 7 years. I studied medicine and, of course, the Spanish language. And after having completed, I returned home. I worked 5 years in the Ministry of Health and as a general practitioner. And then after that, I pursued going to the United States, did the exam, was very successful, got a spot to specialize there, and I did internal medicine. And today I'm a board certified internist or diplomat of the American Board of Internal Medicine, which allows me to practice medicine in the United States. But I choose to come back to my country. I always had my mind on returning home. For me, traveling to the United States was just a matter of completing my education and specializing. And so it will prepare me to come back home to serve my people. And I'm here to serve my people in many capacities, of course, as a medical doctor, and of course, we'll get into the aspect of public service and politics, which I think you want to get onto. So, in a nutshell, that is where I am. I've been involved in the community a lot. I was the president of the St. Peter's Football Association, Basketball Association. I was also executive member of the Eagle Boys Club. We started an Eagle Boys Club in St. Peter's where we capture all the young men when crime was on the uptick. And as a result of that, St. Peter's did not really have the establishment of a gang. And that was mainly because of football, basketball, and that we had established the Eagle Boys Club where we capture all the young men and try to keep them on the straight and narrow. And that's many, many years ago, even before it became popular with the other groups that they have for young men and so forth. And so I would have done a significant amount of community service even before moving on. I coached football for some time, had a very successful youth football team, and that also had products of that league was of that team, people of the likes, people like Atiba Harris, he came through that program. And so just to give you an idea, and we won the championship that year. And I think that was the first championship that we would have won coming out of St. Peter's. And we produced a number of national football players from that and a professional player, more than one professional player actually, from that time. And I would like to say that, I've been involved in that. Now, apart from it, I'm a medical doctor, but my other love and passion is agriculture. I love farming, I love agriculture. I grew up around farms and agriculture and people growing outside gardens and so forth. And so that is what I love. And in a few weeks, I hope to start, my farm. I'm looking at it. And so I hope to start. That is a real passion of mine, a real love of mine. That takes away all the stress of the day and really relaxes the mind and keep your focus and grounded and so forth. And so I look forward to doing that. And in terms of sports, I love sports. I'm a real lover of sports. not getting the chance to watch as much as I used to. But I used to be my two favorite sports, football and cricket. Football and cricket. And I can actually give you a story of cricket why I love cricket. I remember when I went to the United States very quickly, and I went to do my interview to get a spot for specialization because it's very, very difficult to get a spot to specialize, especially coming from the Caribbean, not having a green card or citizenship, and especially coming from Cuba. But I had successfully completed the exams, three of them, which were about 8 to 9 hours each, and I had done, and I had done well. And so when I went to my interview, I remember meeting a professor, and he asked me where I was from, and I said I'm from the Caribbean. And he said, do you know cricket, and do you like cricket? I said, I love cricket. And for the whole interview, that was supposed to be an hour, we spoke cricket for 50 minutes. I can remember clearly. And we spoke 10 minutes of medicine. And needless to say, after that, he wrote to me 2 weeks later and told me that I had this spot at the university. So I would like to say that I used to wonder why I used to stay up all those late nights with my grandfather watching cricket. I understood at that moment. So that is just a very interesting story about how
Paid
sports
off.
got me. It paid off. It paid off. It paid off. So, in a nutshell, basically me, educational wise, community wise, and so forth. I have a son, he's a 14-year-old. He's now in high school. The boys, he's going very fast. He went to sleep during COVID lockdown and wake up taller than me. That was quite interesting. I have one child and he's 14 years. He's going well, doing well. And so my main focus is to make sure that he does well. And so he has been on the right path, and I hope that he continues there, and I'll continue to do my path.
Perfect.
And right. And my mother, Gosel Mills, my mother is actually a Rasta, hardcore, grounded Rasta, and my father is Michael Heiliger, but they met before she became a Rasta. Michael Heiliger, mixed up Heiliger, you probably would know him. And so, I grew up between the two of them, but fundamentally, I grew up in Upper Monkville, St. Peter's. So in a nutshell, I would say that's basically it, unless there are other questions you would have.
All right. Wow, that's an interesting upbringing.
Yes.
Definitely. The part of agriculture keeping you grounded, I would totally agree with you.
Uh-huh.
I know for a fact that my grandparents was into agriculture, and I would see my grandmother go out in the farm by herself, and she was perfectly fine out there on her own.
Uh-huh.
So I totally understand that. Now, when it comes to service, what made you decide to go into medicine?
Right. 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 I'm not hearing that part. What made me go into medicine is the last part that I heard.
Yeah, sorry, I said when it comes
Right.
to service, we all know that the medical field is 100% service. You're pretty much always going to be interacting with the public. What made you decide to go that route?
Right, into medicine. Well, I would say during my time in school, I was into science, deeply into science. I love science deeply. But as you can see, I also was very involved in community work in terms of coaching football, being president of the varying sport teams and so forth in St. Peter's, being part executive member of the youth. And then I asked myself, because initially I was thinking about whether I should do engineering or not. But then I asked myself, based on my love for working with people and my love for people, which I'd done all my life, and looking at the fact that I like science, I think medicine brought both things together. It would, of course, involve working with people, and of course, it involves a lot of science. Medicine is an art and a science at the same time. And so I think that no other career would have brought those two things together like medicine. And that is why I eventually chose medicine. And I think that I chose the correct profession, and therefore I am, very happy that I did. And so that was what really motivated me. Because when I left school, I had decided then I will never ever work for a pro-profit or for-profit organization. I decided that. And so when I finished school, I went to teach. My friends used to ask me, "What are you going to teach for the little bit of money? What are you going to do?" They were able to go in the bank at different places, and even before they were at universities, they were able to buy a vehicle and drive around. I was riding a bike or walking, but I was fine because I decided I would not work for a for-profit organization. And even when I went to the United States and moved on, and I worked at the university hospital, they did a lot of the charity work and so forth. And so that helped significantly. So I would say that um, that, in a nutshell, sums up why I wanted to do medicine, to work among the people and to continue my love for science and working with science to help the people. So it brought together two of my greatest love. And so the career has been fulfilling for me thus far, and I'm really appreciative of what it has delivered to me. However, I really, really appreciate the opportunities that I would have had.
Wow. So teaching, you leave teaching and you go into medicine, and you do all this coaching. So as we see, you are a man of the community. When it comes to your passion for service of the community, where did that come from? Was it something that was instilled by your mother, by your father, to a community group? Where did that come from?
Well, I think basically it would have been instilled in me from a young age. I think my mother, one of the kindest person that I know, and also my grandmother, who was very, very kind. They weren't rich people, but I always see them reaching out and making their contributions in different ways. But I think to a great extent, I grew up in a community then where everybody reached out to everybody. And so that in itself inspired me to work on the behalf of people. I mean, I grew up during a time when things were very difficult in Upper Mount Hill. People didn't have running water, few had electricity and so forth. The ambulance couldn't get into Upper Monkey Hill. And so we really had to band together as a community. And so I became very community minded from that time. If you wanted to build a house, everybody in the community had to come together to pound the stone and head the sand and head the blocks to help you to build a house. So that community spirit, I think, going really was a foundation for me. So I see it inside my family and outside, because that is how we grew up. Everybody looked out for each other. And so I said I would have to do my part to help the community as well. And so that really, really inspired me. But one of the things that inspired me most, a story I can remember, was the story of a lady, an old lady, who during a hurricane, the ambulance couldn't get into Upper Monkey Hill. And I remembered during that time when she got sick and they couldn't get up there, she had to be removed from her home. And I remember seeing some men running out of their homes in the middle of a storm, rushing into the old lady's house to take her out, to get her to the hospital. And I said, wow, look at how these people, and I'm reflecting on it, they're not rich people. I may not have thought that then, but I said, look at the sacrifice that they would have made even of their own life to save the life of our old lady. That to me was extremely, extremely inspiring, and one of the stories that I would say is etched on my heart and etched on my spirit. And so that would have been a story that I can remember where service, selfless service, would have been demonstrated by people who would not have had any returns, not even their names being called anywhere, but true love for a member of the community, giving themselves. So those are the type of stories I grew up with and really inspired me. And being part of groups like the 4-H Club and so forth, and the various sports group where we used to do a lot of community work, clean up here, clean up there, when it really mattered, help people here, help people there. And so I grew up in that environment, and that environment, I think, is what formed me. But to top it off, I would say listening a lot to reggae music. Reggae music, I think, has a lot of political commentary, but not only that, a lot of commentary about love, working with your fellow men, stuff like that. I think that also inspired me. And I was also a Sunday school boy. I never used to miss Sunday school. I used to get some of the best prizes. Well, I used to get the prize for most attendance sometimes for the whole year. And you learn the lessons of service. So all around me was always about service and giving and being selfless, not being greedy, helping who you can, doing the best for your fellow man, and doing your part really to inspire others and to be inspired and to help those who you can. And you do your part in this life and you move on. So I'm very comfortable with where I am and my goals and aspirations and what I want to do for the people of St. Kitts and Nevis. And, you know,
Oh wait. That wasn't us.
Look like he may have broken up.
No, yeah, his call dropped a bit.
Yeah, look like he may have broken up. Bring us back on screen. All right, guys, stand by. We're waiting for Dr. Drew to rejoin. It seems like he may have been having a little technical difficulty. But Era, it's interesting when you hear someone speak of a life of service.
Yeah, it's definitely.
It's
I guess
it's
you could already feel why he went into politics.
yeah.
You know,
From listening to him the first roughly 10 minutes, you could already hear, his love for service, his love for the community. You could already hear that. And you can see that he's a very community oriented individual. That's a great attribute to him.
hopefully we could get him back quickly too. Can you send him a message or something? And politics is a funny thing, eh? Politics is a funny thing. In the meantime, though,
Yeah.
it seems like he has a lot of admirers. Dr. Terrance Dew, the people's champ. I guess they find him to be a genuine guy. So that's great when you have those types of politicians as well.
You have me?
Hope. Okay, he's back with us.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
good. Yes. All
Okay,
right. All right.
perfect.
Good. Perfect. Yes.
All right, all right, Doctor Dew.
Yes. Right.
All
So I
right.
was
So
discussing. Go ahead. Yes.
no, no, no. Continue if you like to continue. Feel free.
No, no. I give you the opportunity. You can
Okay.
ask. But in
Okay.
a
Okay.
nutshell, that was
No,
it.
no. Yeah. Yes. Definitely. So now we have spoken about your service and your love for service, and you've also spoken about how you got into medicine. Now, as we all know, globally, we are going through a pandemic. Every corner of the globe is being affected by this pandemic. And when the pandemic started, as a doctor, what were your thoughts?
Well, as you would have known, I was in Germany around that time. And so I saw that the pandemic was coming. And so I returned home and I gave some warnings to the government. I told them that it is coming and that they should probably close the borders since we did not have any virus at that time. I remember clearly, and we're going to talk some politics, I suspect, tonight, that the deputy prime minister said they're not closing any borders unless they have cases. I think people need to remember that. And so they did not close the borders until cases came into St. Kitts. I was of the opinion that the borders could have been closed earlier. You could have blocked all cases from coming, and the economy internally could have been functioning and could have been opened and helped to mitigate a lot of the sufferings that people are going through now because the economy faltered significantly, both internally and from external. It was really daunting. I mean, when you see what was being planned for, and we here in the Caribbean would not have really seen what was coming across, I think we took it lightly initially. But I think once we start seeing deaths across Europe, across Asia, and even in the United States of America, I think that we definitely, started to take it more seriously. And so, with a pandemic once in 100 years, to having to deal with it as a medical doctor, I think it was quite challenging. But I think that I tried to step up and try to offer help. I remember offering some test kits, at least for us to consider them and for us to at least enter into the field of doing our own examination of them to see if these were things that we could have used to help to fight the pandemic. But of course, politics was hot, and people chose to use propaganda and innuendos and all sort of other ways to kind of, you know, sully my contribution and my input. But nonetheless, I think that as a medical doctor, I take it very seriously. I want to encourage people to continue to take precautions in terms of their hygiene, washing their hands, wearing their mask, sanitizing, social distancing. We should still continue to do those things. And I want to encourage our people to do that at this point in time because they have shown, these measures have shown to work and to also encourage people to be healthy. Getting some sun, we were wondering why the sun was helping. The sun helps because you get vitamin D
D.
from the sun. And now studies are showing that vitamin D helps the immune system and help to fight off this virus. And so therefore, we must understand that in the tropics, getting some sun helps. What I've been doing in my own practice, I've been testing people for vitamin D levels.
Yeah.
And our vitamin D level as a population, from my own practice, showed that our vitamin D levels are on the lower end.
Yeah.
And so I want to encourage people that when they go to see their doctor, that they ask for vitamin D level test. And if it is low,
You got
per
it.
day to make sure that they get it up to the level that it should be. So I want to encourage people to do that. I also want to encourage people to exercise, to eat properly so that it can help the immune system, help their body in general, so that if they were to become infected with anything, that their body would be in a state to fight it off. I still want to say that most people who get COVID don't die. The vast majority of persons don't die. No people, even though there might be a slight uptick, are not necessarily dying from the COVID. However, these are very, very important measures to take to make sure that you're protecting yourself.
Perfect.
Right.
Yeah, Dr. Drew, I realized that you mentioned a list of things that you recommend. What about the vaccine? What are your opinions on the
Right.
vaccine?
So,
Yeah.
as a medical doctor, and I've said this over and over, that
Okay.
I understand science and I understand the science of vaccines.
Mm-hmm.
And so vaccines would have helped human beings, especially over the last 100 years. We are living longer fundamentally because of vaccines, because those infectious diseases that we used to catch, we are now, given vaccines to prevent them. Like rubella, you don't know what rubella is. You probably never you heard about measles, but you have never seen measles.
Well, you have to take the
You heard the
MMR.
mumps, yeah, the MMR, you're getting it. Polio, you get polio drops and you heard of polio sometimes, but you don't even know what it is, right? Certain times of, other types of infection that we get. So, meningitis and so forth that we are protected against. And so I understand the power of vaccines and I understand that vaccines are important. I think I would hope that when I see the distribution of vaccines across the world, I was very, very disappointed because it shows, therefore, that certain vaccines are for certain regions and other regions can't get those vaccines. For example, if we talk about Pfizer, Moderna, we're not getting them in the southern part of the world. If you look clearly, those vaccines are mainly for the northern part. The one that we get so far in the southern part is the AstraZeneca, well, here in the Caribbean, and we have not had choice. Our people should have choice of vaccines. And that is what I promote because there might be issues with certain vaccines that people might have because people are getting information every day and you just can't brush that aside. You just can't shove it under the rug. You have to educate people, you have to engage people, you have to make sure that people have the necessary information. And where people have doubt or questions, people really should have those answers be given to them. And so that is why we were saying before that even before the vaccines became available, once they were making them, we had pointed out, and especially Dr. Denzel Douglas would have also done it, we have said to bring everybody together. Since March of 2020, we were saying, even before that, bring everybody together from all political sides. The Labour Party was shunned and put us and shoved aside.
Okay.
Even now with the vaccines, even then we were saying, bring everybody together. Let the Prime Minister, leader of the opposition, sit, show a united front, and let them educate the people together to have buy-in. And of course, we again were shunned and pushed aside. Now that they realize that there are some issues in reaching herd immunity, the Prime Minister, in his very disrespectful way, his low-down political utterances, as I would term them, is now trying to blame the opposition as to why people are not going to get vaccines. And we find that to be a political expedient type of statement. And if he can't do it and he doesn't know how to do it, then he needs to move. But there's still room and still space for him to take the high ground and bring people together so that we can educate together and have a united front. So people saying there is no answer. There is an answer. The united front is an answer. However, they have shunned us, they have really sought to ridicule us, but in the end, they can't ridicule us because it has shown now that all the propaganda that they spread on me, none of it is true and was true, and it is proven easily. But however, our people still, because of the politicization of this issue, we are not having the full benefit of it. And so I still want to encourage the government to put the politics aside, to ask the Prime Minister to end his small talk and petty talk and blaming the leader of the opposition about why he is not really reaching herd immunity. He's not reaching herd immunity because he has politicized COVID to suit his political agenda. And when you politicize an issue that really should not be politicized, it is sad that the people in the end might suffer and suffer unnecessarily. I know and I'm hoping that there will be other options of vaccines for people who might have issues with vaccines. You know, there are issues with a regular basis. Yeah, I'm here. Yes.
Okay.
People ask me about the clots with respect to the vaccines and so forth. Those are legitimate questions that should be answered because, as you can see, in the northern world, they have limited the use of the vaccine that we have to certain groups. And so, having had that information, people come and ask me all the time, Dr. Joe, what is your opinion? What do you think? If they're not giving it in this country, why should we take it? People are asking those type of questions, and those type of questions should be answered and must be answered. Because this is a new type of therapy, a new type of treatment. You just cannot politicize this and push it under the rug. Because I will tell you, there are people who support the government and who call themselves unity, and they have said that they are not interested in taking the vaccine. So people are not determining whether they should take a vaccine or not based on political affiliation. It is real concern that people have, and there should have been, and there's still room to have a massive campaign in order to properly educate people, but also to hear from people their real concerns and to answer them openly and honestly, and to bring everybody to the fore and everybody to the table and stop the politicization of this issue. But as a medical doctor, I do. And the last thing I will say on it, people should not be forced or mandated to take this vaccine. It is not so. People should not be. I told people, I lived in the United States and work in the United States. I've come to understand the people of the United States. If Joe Biden were to come to the American people and say that he would mandate vaccine, I can guarantee you that there would be a civil war in the United States of America because the people value their civil liberties. They would ask, so today you mandate this, tomorrow what will it be? And so the way and the best way always is to bring people together, educate people, listen to their concerns, and don't force people to take something. Or one of the questions people ask, Dr. Joe, if I were to get sick, who would take care of me? And they are hearing that nobody will take responsibility. And so you're forcing somebody to take something. If something were to go wrong, maybe a type of reaction or adverse effect, then that person would ask the question, who would take care of me? Those
Correct.
are questions that need to be answered. And those are legitimate questions. And they should not just be pushed under the rug. So it's not that anybody, there are a lot of people who believe in vaccine, they're not anti-vax at all. And I am not anti-vax at all. I'm just saying that everybody needs to get to the table. Everybody really need to work together. And the politicization and blaming the opposition is really sullying the whole situation, politicizing the situation even more. And on the part of the Prime Minister, Timothy Harris, to engage in such petty and small talk is really disappointing and not becoming of a Prime Minister.
All right. So, Dr. Drew, you mentioned United States civil war, right? I have a question. Do you think that St. Kitts and Nevis need to introduce something that mimics the Second Amendment here in the United States of America?
Repeat, let the people know what the Second Amendment is.
The right to bear arms, right?
No, I don't think that. I don't think that we need to go to that state. That is one of the things I probably would not agree
It's
to.
it's one of my
I don't
favorite
believe in war. I'm a
amendments.
peaceful man. I believe in dialogue and conversation
Okay.
and stuff like that. I lived up there. I lived in Texas.
Oh yeah.
Everybody had a
Well, Wow.
Well, you see it, you see it, you see it
You don't have a
firsthand.
gun, you need a gun too.
You see it firsthand. But as you mentioned, the opportunity, well, the options of different vaccines. I think one of the problems
Yes.
we are facing in the federation is that we don't have the infrastructure that can to store like a Pfizer, not Johnson and Johnson, the
Moderna.
Moderna, because of the MRA technology that needs those low temperatures to be stored. In this short
So,
space of time, go ahead.
so I'm not sure I understand your point, but our population is very small,
Okay.
relatively. And because our population is very small, we don't need a lot of anything. And I think that we have the capacity, of course, to have, if we were to have that vaccine, if that were the only one that would be available, we would have been able to store it. Why?
Okay.
Because of the small quantities that we'll be able to store and that can be stored at a particular place. I'm confident that that infrastructure could have been put in place.
All right.
Right. Because when you look at the numbers that we have to vaccinate, you're not talking a lot at all. Just be, a couple,
Small.
yes, small number. It's small, a little county in the United States or
Yeah.
less than
Less than
I've had a
UCF,
fridge somewhere.
a
Because they
university.
say that.
All right, all right. Dr. Drew. So based on I just received a message here, and based on the numbers to date, we are 11% fully vaccinated in terms of the population. Do you think we will reach herd immunity?
Well, I think we can reach herd immunity. I think the government strategy needs to change. The government needs to bring everybody to the table, for one. That would be great. And we take the politics completely out of it so that they can have the input from myself, who is a specialist in medicine, and Dr. Douglas, who is also a doctor. And remember, he led the whole AIDS pandemic issue internationally, where he received the Trumpet Award for coming up with a master idea to get drugs for HIV to people of poor countries such as Africa, the Caribbean, and so forth. I mean,
Yeah.
whatever you might think of Dr. Douglas, even Bill Clinton had to tip his hand to him.
Yeah. Yeah.
Bill Clinton was searching for a solution. Dr. Douglas gave it. And so we must respect him for that. He has ideas, and I'm sure Dr. Douglas have a great ideas of how this pandemic could have been handled, not only from a medical standpoint, but even from an economic standpoint to protect the people being St. Kitts and Nevis. Because a lot of people are hurting, taxi drivers, hotel workers, and so forth. People are hurting. They have received many of them have not received severance pay. Some of them would have only received a few dollars from the stimulus package. Their buses are being repossessed, banks writing them for their mortgages and so forth. And so the suffering is real. It's real. It's real. And so, what I would like to say with respect to, and I think you asked me about the options of vaccines,
Yeah.
right? And I touched on that and touched on that. But before I go on, I would like to say that I want to give a shout out to Cuba. Cuba, for a population of only 13,000,
Uh huh.
13 million, 11 million, sorry, is now developing 5 vaccines. And Cuba is developing a vaccine that would also be used in children and pregnant people. And they have already started to vaccinate tens of thousands of people. And their data should be available to the World Health Organization by the end of this month. I want to say that that is an amazing achievement for a country of only 11 million people to be making 5 vaccines. It means it's possible. And
Agree.
it shows that if we have our priorities right, yeah, Cuba has been vaccinating its people for many years, and they have been making their own vaccines. So, as a Caribbean country, a country that would be a country that outside of China, maybe one of the first non-white countries would be making a significant impact in terms of vaccine creation and production. We as Caribbean people should be very, very proud of that, extremely proud of that, because that is an amazing achievement. So, irrespective of what become of the vaccine, to have even attempted to make 5 vaccines, Cuba, I think, should be lauded. And I hope that that will provide choice to our people, that once the Cuban vaccine becomes available, so far it's looking good. I cannot put my head on a block for it, but I like to see what's happening thus far. And I'm still waiting for the scientific data. At the end of the day, I still want to see the science behind it. And once it's approved, if it gets to approval, I think that that can be another option for the people of our federation, since choice is always important and always help in situations where we need more people to participate.
Yeah. Do not want to stay too long on the vaccine conversation. So
Yeah, yeah, we're done with that.
yeah, I wanna talk about your speech that we went through replay just before the conversations began, right? You spoke of people facing foreclosures. Would you like to talk a little bit more about that foreclosures of their
Right.
homes and yeah,
Yes, I mean, I visited a young man this weekend to see a sign on and his fence saying for bank notice and probably I can't remember the exact wording, but basically saying the house will be up for sale. I mean, this is a gentleman who used to work in the hotel industry at a high level, lost his job. Before the pandemic, he had no issue whatsoever with payment. During the pandemic, and which we are going through now, he lost his job. And can you say, and how can a bank look at a young man with a wife and children, cannot find a job? The hotels are closed. Many of the bars are closed. He's out of a job because of an unfortunate situation that has nothing to do with it. And his house is being foreclosed on. I think the government need to look at this. I think there need to be some sort of legislation that would say to banks that for people who were working in the industry, the hotel industry, or people in general who were paying regularly, who were very good customers of these banks and good clients of these banks, who are now going through difficulties because of the pandemic, that you cannot foreclose on those people until the pandemic is over. That has to be passed. How can you throw a man, his wife, and children out of the house because a pandemic has determined that he would not work? I speak passionately about this because when I sat with him and looked at his wife and his 5 children, I mean, it's hurtful. And he's just one of many. A taxi driver would call me and say, Dr. Jude, they're taking away my bus. What am I going to do? How can I keep my bus? The bank is taking away my bus. I mean, the government has to step in and step up and say to these banks, look, our country is going through difficulties because of the pandemic. We need some space to work with our people. And so that after the pandemic, you will be able to recuperate what you would have lost, at least that to rebuild. But as far as it is concerned right now, we cannot be throwing people out of their houses because they can't get work. There's no work available, or very little work available, especially for those who work in the hotel industry, in the tourism industry. And so I would like to say that that this is very disappointing as far as I see.
so the legislator hasn't made any legislation that prevents the banks or even landlords from evicting or foreclosing. No, there has been nothing done for the people.
Well, there have been a lot of talk, but in terms of getting something done to stop this, there has not been any practical application of anything.
So
And that,
we haven't gone to parliament.
well, I have not seen any legislation. And if
Okay.
there's legislation, I would say that that legislation is not being enforced because people are definitely hurting as a result.
Wow.
I
Yep,
mean, you
that's the
also
reality.
spoke about the electricity being cut.
Yes.
Is this is a thing that's happening now? People are actually using their electricity because here in the United States, I know some counties would have said, "Hey, don't cut any electricity right now. We're going through a pandemic." Go ahead.
Yes, I got a message from a lady today. She said, Dr. Drew, you know that I'm sick. I had a stroke. I was working. The pandemic came and they just came and cut off my electricity. People's electricity in St. Kitts and Nevis, they are losing their electrical connection. They have no power in their houses. People are hurting as a result of this. I have real life examples. Somebody say, Dr. Joe, my current gone. The fridge shut off. I can't store anything. The little I had, I lost. I want to say to the government, please, please stop cutting people's electricity. After the pandemic, let's look and see where we are at and let's start rebuilding and recuperating. But at this time, I am saying to the people, to the government, please, please stop cutting people's electricity. It is real. Everything that I said in this speech, and I know you are referring to the speech, every single one is real. And the people of St. Kitts know that. They know that houses are being foreclosed on. They know people are being evicted. They know that electricity is being cut. And we are saying, and I am saying, that during a pandemic that is stressful for everybody, do not put the people under more stress. The government needs to say, let's take up the bill, let's take up the tab for what would have run up during this time. And after the pandemic, let's find a way to recuperate. But to hurt your people when they're hurting, is like putting your foot on the neck of a man who is down. And we are saying that that should not be. And we are saying that people should be more sensitive, more compassionate, and allow all people at least to live a decent life until they can recuperate for themselves after the pandemic.
All right. I totally agree with you. I don't think that anyone should lose anything or should have any utilities disconnected at this time. I agree with you. There's a question that we have from the audience. Do you think the quarantine time for fully vaccinated people should be less than 9 days?
Well, at this time, other countries have taken a different route. They're not quarantining people for so long at all once they are fully vaccinated. So I think it was 14, they bring it down to 9. I think that at some point it should be revisited and see if that time is actually should be that long. And so they really should look at it. I know there are some concerns about people getting vaccinated and still carrying the virus around. But 9 days, other countries have decided that that is too long. They probably can take a look at other countries and see scientifically what would be a better adjustment in terms of the time.
All right. Gotcha. Thank you. All right. So, as we know, last June was the federal election, and the results for your constituency took over 24 hours to come in. What was that about?
Let me tell you what happened in my constituency. A lot of irregularities went on. Even on election day, people find their names were taken off the list. The list, people's names were off. In election day, we recognize that. We found that when we went to the polling station, what you find was some transparent ballot boxes. Ballot boxes. People were afraid that when they vote, that people will be able to see through the ballot box and see who they voted for. Those are legitimate concerns. I think the act would speak to having a particular type of box. In discussing with lawyers, that is something that should be challenged, of course. Not only that, the boxes were not closed with padlocks. They were closed with those zip type of strings. You know those strings that they use sometimes to close things? Zip ties. That is what they use. Imagine you're closing a ballot box with a zip tie. That is what we recognize. And then after that, the counting, of course, started in my constituency. During the count, Lawyer Butler, Juicy Byron, Sean Richards, Eugene Hamilton went up in the yard of the St. Peter's Community Center to stop the count. I had to go up there and chase them out the yard and ask them, what are they doing there? What is Sean doing there? You're not the deputy prime minister. This is an election and the counting is still happening. I asked Juicy Byron, are you still at the attorney general? You need to get out of this yard. And the same way that I asked Eugene Hamilton. When they couldn't go there to stop the count, they sent lawyers to enter the room to stop the count on a number of occasions. And then the prime minister himself went up there with the commissioner of police. These are the kind of things that took place on election day in St. Peter's. And so there could have been pandemonium up there. So all that were tactics to intimidate people because they recognized that even though they would have done what they did during the COVID, in terms of limiting my ability to campaign, I could not campaign fully. They were still losing hundreds of votes based on the count from the last election, and they were shocked that this was happening. And so we know that we had defeated Eugene Hamilton. We know that he had become a weakened candidate, and the results reflected that. And they did everything in their power to make sure that I did not win, from taking names off the list on election day, by intimidating the vote count when they realized that Eugene Hamilton was losing boxes that he thought he would have won, or losing boxes by margins smaller than he expected. And intimidated. That is why the count took over 24 hours. And I couldn't call for a recount because I would have had to use the same people, and to have people there more than 24 hours to count again, people probably would have suffered heart attack or stroke, having them to stay up 48 hours straight. And so, looking at the whole health situation. And they planned that. And that was part and parcel of the plan of the authorities to frustrate the counting constituency number 8 when they recognized that they did everything in their power and they still could not. And that is why I had my election petition to bring to the court. But I would say that there was a procedural error and that had to be withdrawn. And then I brought a charge against Eugene Hamilton. And now we know that the DPP, the office of the DPP, is blocking that case from going, doing everything in their power to stop my case from going to the DPP, who was on PAM platform, on the platform of PAM with Sean Richards, and there are pictures to show it, blocking my case from going, manipulating the whole legal process, the electoral process. But I'll keep fighting and I'll keep pushing because I understand extremely well, very well, that what took place in number 8 was a travesty, and I keep pushing and pushing and pushing because the people deserve the representative who they voted for.
Wow. Yeah. I remember when that election night, because we had election coverage as well, and at 8:30 the morning, the following morning is when we decided, hey, we got to cut it and go sleep. And at 6:30, when we came back
Yes,
on, there still wasn't any results as yet, and we wanted to know about that, and then we know that you
that
went
is
to
why it took
court.
so long.
Yeah, I mean,
Yes,
we had an
Yeah,
unsettling
they
feeling as
interrupted the
well.
count.
yeah. We never felt good about the results. There was something shady. We always knew that about those results. But then you went to court, and this has been the fastest turnaround I have seen from a document being filed to a final result. Why? What was that? What did they tell you? What did you hear when you went to court?
Well, there were two courts that took place, two cases. The petition really wasn't. We were advised because I was going on 5 grounds. I mean, I had a lot of evidence of taking names off the list, evidence of inconsistencies, bribery. We had the whole spectrum because every single thing that applied to constituency number 8. And my case was the standard case, and the other cases would have been drawn up based on my case. Unfortunately, the truth is there was an error in terms of timing of filing. Not that the case was filed in time, but there's a part where you have to pay to file the case and prove that you would have paid. We thought everything was 7 days, but one was 7 days and one was 3 days, and that created some issues there. However, the second case, when we filed the petition for what took place in terms of treating in the constituency, we had a magistrate by the name of Magistrate Eddie. He is known to be a PAM supporter, and he's also known to be one who would have stood in cases for PAM. When we presented our arguments as to why he should recuse himself means he should step away from the case and allow somebody else to do it. He himself revealed that he stood for a case for Eugene Hamilton in a previous case, and therefore he recused himself. When he recused himself, the DPP then rushed to the court to take over the case. When Eddie was in charge and was the magistrate, he never rushed to the court. But the minute we got Eddie to recuse himself from the case, he rushed to the court and took over the case. Then he went on the radio and he started to make pronouncements about my evidence that he had not even seen. He had not even seen the evidence and he was speaking about it. And so we wrote to him and we told him about it. And so we went back to court. And so he said he needed some time in order to make a judgment and he would do some investigation. He came back to court and he said that he would not continue my case. However, he did no investigation. None, absolutely no investigation. And that shows us, of course, that there's biasness in the decision. How can you shut down somebody's case without even investigating? I gave you my evidence and you're not going to do investigation. But we knew that that is what would have been done, because he had the press conference before he had the evidence and said he heard about the evidence. How you could hear about the evidence when you would not have had um, um, evidence submitted to you? And so he really is they're trying to block the case, but we'll keep working and see what would happen, because we need justice. We need justice in the constituency. So as far as the two cases are concerned, that is where. So the second one is at the stage now where the DPP is standing in the way. And we're asking, if I don't have evidence, Eugene Hamilton has his lawyers, I have my lawyers, let us go to court and let the magistrate decide. The DPP is not a magistrate. He's not trained as a magistrate. Let a magistrate decide the veracity of my evidence, because I know that we have very good and strong evidence with which to prove this.
All right. There's a question here for you. Now, with the way that things turned out within the constituency, do you think that overseas observers would have made a difference within the election?
A big difference. And that is why they did not want any overseas observers. They called out to the OAS, and then they invited them and then disinvited them. If they know when election date was going to be, they could have had a time frame in which these persons could have been quarantined, because they would have been willing to be quarantined. You could have brought them in and quarantined them and say election is going to be in the next couple of months. We need observers who can be on the ground for the next couple of months or next month. Bring them in, quarantine them, and then after that have them on the ground and ready to go by the time the election is called. However, they specifically and they manipulated the situation so that there would not be any international observers. They brought in a handful of observers, or less than a handful. I think it's maybe three, from three Caribbean countries. And we normally would have from the Caribbean countries, from OAS, from external organizations, so that the elections can be properly observed. And so there was a very poor observation of the elections. They call on the Christian Council and they call on the NGOs, and I think it was the chamber who wrote and said, we don't have the capacity to carry out this type of activity and exercise. And so they did not want any international observers, and we kept asking for international observers. And that too was a travesty. That is where, again, they used the pandemic for their political gain. And I hope that our people are not going to overlook these things, because these things should not be. We should have had international observers. When you have a government that does not want international observers, they have something to hide. That has to be the assumption, that they have something to hide. Or they knew that they would have engaged in some type of activities that the international observers would have easily picked up on, and they would have reported it and said that the elections in St. Kitts and Nevis at least did not go down fairly. I want to say, as I wrap up this point, that the New York Times, in its June 26th edition, said that democracy was under threat in the Caribbean and Latin America. And St. Kitts and Nevis was the most prominently mentioned country, saying that the pandemic was used to shut down the opposition from campaigning while the government could have campaigned. I could not campaign. They shut me down from going door to door, while Eugene Hamilton could have gone to door freely. And I want you all to look at that article from the New York Times, June 26th edition 2020, that says democracy is under threat in the Caribbean and Latin America. That can easily be researched. And the New York Times did their own investigation and reached their own conclusion. That we know took place here because we could not go to campaign. We could not go door to door. And if you are in a campaign and you can't talk to the people who you are trying to convince to vote for you, you are dead on arrival. You are dead on arrival. How else will you convince somebody to vote for you when you can't even get to the door to speak to them? And that was part and parcel of the whole politicization of the COVID situation to give them an unfair advantage in the election. So we are very aware of all these shenanigans and tactics to shut us down.
Well, one of the things I would have noticed during the COVID election, as we call it, is that the government had entertainment, and there were times when the St. News Labour Party did not have any entertainment. They would just have the speakers, and then that would be the end of it. Whereas the government would have had entertainment, various bands and stuff like that.
We couldn't
Did you
have
guys
bands.
accept? Wow.
We took the government to court. You heard the Prime Minister say that we took him to court. We took the government to court because what we wanted the court to say before the elections is that the opposition should have had the same opportunities as the government. Marriott was used to hold big jam sessions. Big jam sessions. You know how much people, how many persons we could have had at our meetings? 25 the most. And they had 3 police officers where we used to keep our meetings. So there am I talking into a TV screen with no audience in the height of a campaign. But then the government candidates gone over to Marriott, big jam session, bands, hi-fis, a big party over there, big public meeting over there. People giving special passes after 12 in the night, breaking the curfew to go to these big jam sessions in Marriott while we were shut down. And that is why we took the government to court. And that is what the Prime Minister was talking about. So I want to put that into context. And I'm happy that you brought it up. That again was one of the things that was used against us. So they had big public meetings, big jam sessions, and we were stuck in a small room with 20 something people. And those are the injustices that took place. But I would like to say that we are very aware of what took place because even now they want to play politics with the COVID because there's going to be a big jam session down at Black Rocks, big jam session, and we are keeping a close eye on that because they have said to us that we can't have more than 150 people at our outdoor events. So we are going to see how many people are going to be at that outdoor event.
Culture
Oh,
on my
wow.
ear. Culture on my ear. Yeah.
Right. So I want you all to take a look at the New York Times article. I think it was June 26th. The title of it was Democracy Under Threat in the Caribbean, in Latin America and the Caribbean, so that you can read it for yourself and see an independent source who would have investigated the situation and who would have reported on it.
Yeah. Um, I had an unsettling feeling when I heard reports of Dr. Drew Wynn and then Hamilton, Honorable Eugene Hamilton, Dr. Drew, Eugene Hamilton,
Yes.
over 24 hours. It was it just, I lost faith in democracy at that point in time.
Yes.
At that point in time, I couldn't understand. But Dr. Joe, I have a question. When it comes to the
Yes.
numbers, right? Even if you had won your seat, you would still not have been in government. And I do understand the importance, right, of making sure that the people have the representative that they voted for. But there was also the talk of a phone call being made, right, at the same time over the waters. I don't know if you have any ideas what I'm talking about, but a certain phone call being made over the waters that night.
Well, am not aware of any negotiation or phone calls at the time. Now, I was really concentrating on the counting in my constituency
Okay.
and why is it Sean Richards and Hamilton and Juicy Byron and the Prime Minister, all them stopping the count every minute. Every minute they're stopping the count. Every minute they're stopping the count. That was my main concern, my major concern. I was laser focused on what was taking place there at the counting in my constituency.
Now, Dr. J, what can we do to have the population more educated on what democracy really is and what it means to live in a democracy? Because these problems, like the ballot box not properly secured, all the issues that you're bringing up, they're a real threat to democracy. So, what do you suggest we could do as a nation to educate the people on what is right and what democracy looks like?
Right, and you are correct. I think it should start in school. I think we should have even a class that says civics, or you can call it what you want. And that class will be dedicated to educating people about democracy and what democracy is. I think that is fundamental and important so that people can understand that. So, all going through your years, you're understanding democracy, why you should fight the democracy, why you should defend the democracy, and for people to understand the rules and regulation governing an election, so that when you see irregularities, you yourself will become heightened and will call it out. So, I think we can start there. Another thing we can do is have an independent electoral commission, the totally independent, as in other countries, such as even Jamaica, where you should have bipartisan appointment of the commissioner, and he should not necessarily be under any government, any minister, because it is obvious that that commissioner can be manipulated or assumed to be manipulated. So we need to make it completely and totally independent of influence of the government, so that people can have more faith in the government, because we know that the present commissioner of the elections here in St. Kitts and Nevis, we know he has a particular type of leaning based on decisions that he would have made and his utterances and so forth. We know that, and the people in St. Kitts and Nevis know that. And therefore, to eliminate all of that, we should create a truly independent electoral commission. I think that would help significantly and to empower people. The other thing is, and that commission, I think, would be more inclined to do exactly what the people want. When we went to the electoral office and we saw the irregularities taking place there, I think we had a demonstration at the electoral office. People go to register and people are being turned back. Names coming off the list. I remember close to the election, maybe election day even or day before, a young lady made a video from the electoral office where she said her name was taken off the list, and she went there to get her name back on, and they would not put back on her name, and she had to, of course, make a video to bring it to the attention of the people as to the injustice that she was suffering and the fact that she was being disenfranchised. She could not vote, or her right to vote was being taken away. And so clearly she was upset about it, and she highlighted it. Another thing that they have done is that we used to have persons who could go to the electoral office and look at the electoral list and so forth. They have said we can't send those people as we used to anymore. So there's less scrutiny when it comes to the list, less scrutiny when it comes to the list. We saw names come off the list who did not go through the particular process, and letters being forged. I think in constituency number 2, Marcel Liber has a good example of somebody's name who came off the list and a forged letter. I mean, those are the type of things that those took place, irregularities like those things. And so we have to eliminate them by educating the people from school coming through, and to create a truly independent electoral commission. As in the United States, I think you have the college that is truly independent, cannot be manipulated by any political party. We need that here in St. Kitts and Nevis so that democracy can be further strengthened as we go along into the future.
All right, good point. There are questions in the audience as well. Um,
Yes.
there's a question from Shaya Lawrence, who wants to know, if you had won your seat, what move would his party have made? Um, good point.
Right.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay.
I think you asked a similar
I think
question.
so. I think so.
Yeah.
And
Right. I would just laser focus on making sure that the count was completed in the way. The count went over 24 hours. I had not slept for like 36 hours, because you understand the stress and the tension around that time, and all the frustration and shenanigans that were used to frustrate the counters, and to make sure it went over 24 hours so that the opportunity to recount would almost be zero. These were tactics used. I'm fully aware of them, and that is why I took Eugene Hamilton to court. As I said, the DPP office is blocking the case, and I'm saying that I'm going to fight as much as I could so
okay,
that democracy at least could have a chance.
a chance. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Um, One of the big things during the election season was the store bribes. This thing of money going here, money going there, and stuff like that. What are your thoughts on this pay for vote system that we seem to have cultivated within the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis?
Well, pepper vote is really illegal, it's a real illegal exercise. But it was on steroids in the last election. On steroids. In any elections, you can have some irregularities here and there, but when it becomes mainstream, that is when it becomes very dangerous. You saw people counting money and say, "Yeah, I received this $3,000 from this particular candidate," and so forth. It has become normal. People, because people had difficulties during the COVID, very difficult times. People could not find food. People could not buy Pampers or child food and so forth, and so they were very, very vulnerable. And so we know that people went and offered to buy the votes. For example, in my own situation, I have cases where people were told, well, this is for your vote. I giving you this for your vote, so and so and so. And so that is what the DPP is blocking. Not only that, there was a distribution food program that took place. Everybody during the pandemic, you are allowed to give, but you know that there are rules governing how to give, and those rules was severely violated. Using food for votes, and when you see the strategy and the video of how they outline how they were going to do it, that is what I think needs to come to the fore. Because those things should always be highlighted and they should be legal. People should not be subjugated to pressures to vote because they can't buy food. If that happens in a democracy, you would lose your democracy. I see poor people in poor countries all the time, and they value their democracy because their vote is the only thing that they have that a rich man may not be able to buy.
Yeah.
And that is why I'm telling people, guard your vote. That is the only thing they can't buy. They can't use the money necessarily to directly influence because they can say all manner of things. But in a democracy, the billionaire has one vote, and the man who works for minimum wage or might be unemployed, he also has one vote. And so when you sell your vote out, you're really selling out yourself and your power. So you have to really guard um, your votes, and that is important.
All right. I have a question that was just sent in here. Um, in the 2015 and last election, there were polling stations that received their voters' registration list late on election day. Some received the list an hour, 30 minutes to an hour late. What are your thoughts about computerizing the voters list instead of having this paper list that we have that we go around with? And the whole
Let me tell
election,
you,
actually, make the whole election
the
digital.
problem the problem wasn't the voter list getting late, It was part and parcel of the strategy to get the voter list to the voting station late. We have to understand that. It was part of the strategy. So even if you had it electronic, the electronic message would have been sent late. This was part of the irregularities in making sure that you cut the voting time in certain areas so that people would have less time to vote. And that is the danger because you might say, okay, we're going to extend the time. But a man might be home and say, by the time come and gone, he opened late, I went there and I wasn't there, I went home. Now I going to close 6 o'clock, why should I go back there? So by the time you're there and you say, okay, let's extend it to half an hour, the man who would have come back already thought that the voting station is closed. It's supposed to open at a particular time and it's supposed to close at a particular time. And that was violated during the last elections. That was violated during the last elections. These are the shenanigans that took place. So even running it electronically, I'm not sure if it's going to help because it was part of the strategy to frustrate the system and frustrate people with respect to that.
Uh, Dr. Drew, there's another question here. Did you pay for any votes during the last election,
Yeah,
or
Tanya
were
Williams.
you? Yeah.
Tanya Williams is a fake name, and I'm not going to engage any fake
No,
names
that's
tonight.
a real name. That's a real person. It's a real person.
Okay, well, if that is a real
It is
person,
a real
that is
person.
absolutely not.
Okay.
I will not engage in that. What we did a program of distribution, and that was long before the elections, long before the elections. And that is why we say you could have helped, but you can't help you violated the rules. I'm not talking to the evidence at this time because my case is still in court. But when you see the video of how they manipulated that type of thing to gain votes, that is what I'm talking about. Using state resources to buy votes and influence votes.
Okay. Yeah. That that is an attack on democracy as well. I don't like to hear about it at all, at all, at all, at all. It really shakes me. It really does. So, Dr. Drew, let's talk about the medical care in St. Kitts and Nevis, right? This should be something dear to your heart. Let's talk about affordable care. Any plans for affordable care for St. Kitts and
Well,
Nevis?
I don't know. I think the Second Nevis Labour Party had a plan. When the government changed in 2015, those plans were left on the desk, and nothing has been done. Eugene Hamilton has been giving a lot of lip service to this, but nothing has been delivered. He has failed because first Eugene Hamilton brought in an insurer from Trinidad and sought to introduce it on a private type of scheme, and I think was basically for people to make money from it. That is my opinion, and I've said that, and they will never challenge that because I know the genesis of that. However, nothing has been done. From my perspective, my philosophy is this: healthcare should be a right, a human right. Should not be a privilege, should not be anything. It should be a right as people have right to fresh air and so forth. If your people cannot be guaranteed health, then your people who make up the country, who are the number one resource, who without there is no country. How can you not have a health system that protects your health? And so that I think that under Dr. Drew, in a labor administration, uh, we will make sure, we will make sure that we make healthcare a human right, a human right. All right, I saw Tanya Williams responded,
Yeah.
and I am happy that you make the clarification. It's just that there's a Williams who is a fake name that goes around. Thank you very much for that clarification, and I wanted to make that. I'm willing to answer any question from anybody who is a real person. So that was an error on my part, and Tanya, no offense intended. And I think Ira would have helped in correcting that.
Yeah, definitely.
But I think I answered the question nonetheless.
Definitely. But
Good.
so I don't know if you would like to disclose or if you would want to discuss. I mean, how are some of the ways that you would able to make affordable healthcare a thing? I mean, would it be an introduction
Well,
of tax or you know?
I would say, I would say, I would say that, and I think, oh, just to point, say Curtis Cook making a point here that up in Newtown, the polling station opened 8 a.m. and who was in charge? Timothy Harris' brother-in-law, who is Jermaine. And that is a fact. These are facts. And that is why I say it did not matter if it was electronic or not. They just had the agenda to make sure that they frustrate the people. Now, when it comes to the healthcare, I think once you put in that healthcare is a human right, I think the policies will come in place to ensure. I have my own plan and my own ideas of how it can be done.
Mm-hmm.
I will introduce that at the right time. At the right time. I'll give you the opportunity to ask me at the right time how I will introduce it. I
Gotcha.
will not speak of the specifics of the plan at this point in time. But I will say to you that after a doctor Drew in a government, healthcare will be considered a human right. And
Got it.
with that, I would say that people will be taken.
Before I move on, Dr. Drew, Sazam Hall wants you to know, Dr. Drew, good point about the poor man and the billionaire having one vote. The problem is after the elections, elected officials have all the time for the billionaire and no time for the poor man. Now, Dr. Joe, I think before the election there was a talk of a boundary commission, a boundary change. Where we at with the boundary changes? We look at your constituency. I think it's the largest constituency in the whole of
Yes.
the federation, right? Then I look at maybe Nevis. I think it's 10. St. George's Parish that has less than 1,000 votes. 1,000 votes. I think that in itself is an attack on democracy because when I look at the numbers, it seems as if, or not even seems as if, but some votes carry more weight than others. Where are we at with the boundary commission? Is it something that comes up only during election and around election time, or is it something that the Labour Party is constantly pursuing?
The boundary commission is in place right now. And there are two members from the opposition and two members from the government. I think Sean Richards and I think Akil Nisbet are from the government side. And from our side, Dr. Denzel Douglas and Dr. Jeffrey Hanley.
Okay.
And the head of the commission is Mr. Buchanan. I think he's a surveyor, and he's the head of the commission. So right now the commission is doing the study as to what will happen with the boundaries. So that work is going on presently. But what's happening in the government now? There's a split between PLP and PAM and CCM, and so they don't know where the boundaries are going to go because three of them among themselves, especially the two over here, St. Kitts and Nevis, PAM and PLP, they are fighting to see how they can try to fix the boundaries to suit themselves. But because there's a split between them and the unity concept is really broken down, it was never based on any foundational principles. It was based on two things: demonized Dr. Denzel Douglas, and the other one was the advancement of Timothy Harris as Prime Minister. Nothing else it was about. And so now it is revealed that Timothy Harris wants a third term after he would have said to the country that he was only going to be there for 2 terms and that anybody who stayed more than 2 terms is a dictator. Timothy Harris now has a fake profile going around called Third Term that is asking people to give him a third term after he ridiculed Dr. Douglas and said he's a dictator for staying more than 2 terms. Can you imagine the hypocrisy in all of that? And so they are fighting among themselves to see how they're going to twist the boundaries. So the third term for Tim is all over Facebook, spreading all kind of lies and propaganda to keep Tim in. And according to his own words, he would become a dictator if given a third term. And I want to say to Timothy Harris, you will not get a third term.
Oh wow. Um, do you have any
I
thoughts
like
on
that.
a third term? Do you have any thoughts on the changing the constitution and constitution reform on a whole? Let's kind of dive into that as well. Constitution reform on a whole. I don't know the last time I've heard. Well, we have made some amendments to the constitution. You look at the U.S. Constitution. You have amendments left, right, and center. I haven't heard of any amendments in SKN. Are there
No,
any?
but
Right.
Go ahead, Reese.
wait.
No,
Hold on, Doctor
go ahead.
Joe.
Yeah.
Hold on. Before we speak of constitutional amendments and stuff like that, what we need to speak of is the fact that 95% of our citizens do not know the Constitution at all. So making an
Right.
amendment to something that I don't know does not benefit me. So I think what we need to do, just like you said, about
Excellent.
getting information out about the vaccine. We need to start doing this about the Constitution as well, allowing
Yes.
individuals to know their rights as a citizen, because a
Excellent
lot of
point.
individuals don't know their rights as a citizen.
Excellent point, and I think that will be introduced in a civics class that we mentioned earlier with the democracy,
Yes.
right? Because the
Yes.
democracy will have to be based on the laws of the country, and they
Of
would have
course.
to also know the laws of the country. So
Let me
that is
tell
an
you two
excellent
things
point.
that
Go.
each child should have when they, each child should definitely part of their book list should be a constitution of St. Kitts and Nevis. They should have that.
I agree.
From the time you can read enough, you should have Constitution of St. Kitts and Nevis. And there should be classes where people would be able to go through that. There should be classes for that. So we have to get serious about the democracy and educating our people to defend and protect democracy. So I agree totally with Iran. We have spoken about it earlier. That is something that definitely should be looked at and should be done. Every child should get a constitution. And Tanya Williams, and I can't apologize more to Tanya Williams. I'm sorry. So I look forward to meeting Tanya now. I'm a man. Whenever I can say I'm wrong, I was wrong. So Tanya, I agree that it should be taught in school. Should be done.
Yeah, definitely. So, any thoughts on constitution reform?
Right. So constitutional reform, there have been some talk around it, but there are things in the constitution that should be made. For example, I consulted some lawyers, and they're saying to me that the right to vote is not in the constitution. And I say, what? Yeah. So it's basic things like that that people may not know that cell should be in the constitution. In the constitution, there's a Nevis, but there's no Saint Kitts. There's a Nevis and a Saint Kitts Nevis, but no Saint Kitts.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you're aware of that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
So those
interesting.
are things in the Constitution that we can really look at. In terms of people might ask how long a leader should stay there. There, of course, the argument can be made. The people will determine the change of the leader at a particular time in the Westminster system, which we have. My point on that, though, is that the Prime Minister, Timothy Harris, went around the country and said anybody who stays more than 2 terms is a dictator, is a despot. He used some very strong words against people like that and against Dr. Douglas. And now he's going around asking for a third term. I mean, this would be the biggest hypocritical political move that I would have ever seen in St. Kitts and Nevis. And that is why I'm saying you can't be saying on one hand anybody who stays more than 2 terms is a dictator and want a third term. That cannot work. That cannot work. Timothy Harris needs to leave after his second term and move on. Right.
I do
So
agree that I do agree. I think term limits should be in place for leadership of the country. But what I also feel as well is that I feel that if you're going to do the go to the constitution, I feel that we need to have an election day, right?
Yep.
Be it the first Monday in May, the second Tuesday in September, something that is general. Not I call an election when I feel. I think
I
something like that is what we need.
Right. I think that is fair. That is fair, and that is a good question. And to have electoral reform again, you take constitutional reform rather. You take the constitution and you move around the country educating people and having meaningful discussions and so forth, so that people can give their feedback and we take into consideration very, very importantly what people would want and what people's opinion would be. So there needs to be a discussion with the citizenry with respect to electoral reform because it's important, it is fundamental, and we have to do this from time to time in order to keep strengthening our country and to strengthen our constitution. I just say a note that the constitution should have been reviewed in 1986. That was the plan. Not you see that's what Sazam said, but the point is taken that it needs to be visited, it needs to be upgraded. We just recently did that to our own constitution in the Labour Party.
Mm-hmm.
I said on the platform, and I read it somewhere,
Yeah.
that the St. Kitts Labour Party is possibly the oldest active political party, not in CARICOM, but the Commonwealth.
Mm,
I mean, we're there since 1932. It is a very old party. Our party came before World War II.
wow.
Went through World War II, survived all of that. Our party has been around for a long time, and we had to go to conference where I was the chairman and really made some changes to the constitution. But that took us a number of years. It's years we have been at this. I remember going to one of our conferences and we introduced a plan and the Commonwealth said, no, 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 Dr. Drew, where you all going with that? And then you had to go back to the table again and work it again. And we met with our people in the constituency. We met with our people in the zones of our constituency. We met with our grassroots people, our affiliate organizations such as Young Labour and Labour Women. We went and we went again, sent electronically, in person, all sort of ways, until we could have reached a point where the Commonwealth say, okay, these are the changes that we need. So we have done that process in the St. Kitts Nevis Labour Party. It is not an easy process, but it is a doable process. Because if you are to maintain democracy and strengthen democracy, then you must revisit your constitution from time to time. That is all we are saying. And it's time that we revisit the constitution. However, the people must be the fundamental part of the discussion with respect to constitutional reform.
And I like that. I like that the people should be involved because the people is the government, and
Correct.
everybody else is, well, you have the
Right.
government and the
Hired.
representative of the government,
Yeah,
but
everybody else is hired. The people run
yeah,
the show, and everybody else is hired and fired at the will of the people, and so it should be.
and I think that is very true. Um,
Yes.
I want to dive into severance because there's an issue going on right now where severances are not being paid, especially in this hard time. Um, would you like to speak on that?
Right. So the issue with this is that the severance pay has not been paid to many persons. We know for sure that the St. Kitts Nevis Labour Party, severance space, something that the labor movement fought for, the labor union would have fought for. It is part and parcel of, what we fight for the working class, so that when people are severed, that they don't go home empty-handed, but that they can go home with some money that would last them at least a few months based on how much they were working for, so that until they find a new job and helping to really bridge the gap. Many persons would have been sent home. They would have fulfilled the criteria. At least the fundamental criterion would have been the 12 weeks, and they would have been severed from their job. Well, two criteria really, instead of one criterion. And those two being fulfilled, that person should get their pay. And many persons across this country have not received that. I mean, imagine you're not receiving any pay. You did not get anything from the stimulus package, and you didn't get your severance pay. How are you to eat? How? How are you to eat? You can't eat. And that is why you should eat. So instead of Tim going around talking about third term, he needs to go pay people the severance pay, because he's coming out after the 2 terms.
What are your thoughts on the CPL coming to St. Kitts and Nevis?
My thought on
The CPL.
uh-huh.
I think that would be at a cost to the country, right? If I'm not mistaken. Any thoughts on that?
The CPL?
Yeah.
Well, many persons are asking if that is going to be a cost to the country. Why will you incur a cost like that when people cannot even eat food? When people cannot even eat food. And so people are asking that you prioritize. So the government need to come to the people and show the people that this would not be a burden on the people. Because if it's a burden on the people and you cannot help the people, but yet you will host an event like this. So I'm not against hosting any event. I'll be totally true. I'm not against hosting any event. But during this time, the government just need to prove to the people that it will be a net benefit and not a loss. So I'm still waiting on the government to present its numbers to see if it makes sense or doesn't make sense.
All
But if
right.
it does make sense, of course, we, the St. Kitts Nevis Labour Party, is who brought CPL to St. Kitts and Nevis. I remember when we brought CPL to St. Kitts and Nevis, they said we're building big stadium and wasting money and all sort of things. And look at them now trying to host the same CPL that they used to decry during the time of labor. So we are not against the CPL. We love the CPL. We brought the CPL. But we are saying during this time, we just want to make sure that the people of St. Kitts and Nevis would benefit and would not be hurt even more, because a lot of people are hurting. Because here you would host CPL, and there are a lot of people who can't eat food. I don't know if tickets will be sold. I don't know what will be the nature of that. But people are hurting, and hurting significantly in all of this.
All right, got you. Now we have to dive into the meat. Now, one of the things that was said, I think in the constitutional meeting that you guys would have had recently, is that Timothy Harris would have undermined the St. Kitts Nevis Labour Party. What are your thoughts on the actions of Dr. Timothy Harris?
Timothy Harris, by nature, his political action is that he's an underminer, he's a deceiver, very deceptive, and he's, according to the Labour Party, he has committed treason. His actions were treacherous, and he will never be accepted back into the St. Kitts Nevis Labour Party. Never. We would accept other persons except Timothy Harris. And the comrades at the last conference has basically said that he cannot return ever. The reason for that is because he's stuck in the party. Unlike Sam Kanda, whether you agree with it, he resigned. Unlike Dwyer Astafan, he resigned. Timothy Harris wanted it both ways. He wanted to be undermining the party while remaining in the cabinet of the party. And eventually, instead of doing the honorable thing and resigning, he had to be fired, because Timothy Harris is really that type of person politically. So now he really brought down the Labour government. He said all sorts of nasty things about Labour. He said all sorts of nasty things about me as a candidate. As you can see, his third term Timothy Harris fake page is here trying to tarnish my name. Again, can't help. That is in nature. Look at third term, spreading all kind of rumors and propaganda. And what he is doing, Timothy Harris, now he went over to join with Pam and CCM. And we said, and especially Dr. Douglas, he said, I know the man. He warned Pam and he warned CCM. He said, I know the man. The same thing he do to Labour is the same thing he will do to you. And look at what is happening now. Timothy Harris undermined Labour to bring down the government, a party that gave Timothy Harris everything that he has. Remember, under Pam, Richard Keynes fired Timothy Harris, according to Timothy Harris's own words. And when he could not find work, Labour people, from their pittance from working in the sugar industry, used to contribute to help to support Timothy Harris, all when he was in university.
Oh, wow.
Can you imagine that? And those same people, Timothy Harris is throwing a lot of them under the bus. Who does that? The same Timothy Harris now who went to Pam and made help to get Pam into government is now undermining Pam. I can say to you clearly that Pam is being undermined significantly by Timothy Harris. And Sean Richards, who just noticed it, Sean, you are too late. You are too late. I did some canvassing and I met some hardcore Pam people who now told me they're not supporting Pam anymore. So he has undermined Pam. Look at what he has done to Mark in Nevis. He has undermined Sissy. And we on one hand, he was saying all sorts of things about NRP. He's now trying to get in the good books of NRP to serve his political purpose because he's now going around with nonsense that he wants 3 terms, or 3rd term. And so Pam will suffer the consequences. And CCM also will suffer the consequences. The only hope Pam and CCM have is to call a motion of no confidence against Timothy Harris this year. Because the only party who will survive Timothy Harris and beat Timothy Harris is the St. Kitts Nevis Labour Party. Pam is now too weak to do it. And if a motion of no confidence is not called before the next Nevis Island administration, Timothy would also undermine. He can't help. He can't help. So he has started the process to undermine Mark, and he has already undermined Pam, and Pam is more dead than they think, and the results will show it. Because Sean went to sleep. As I would put it, Sean went to party and forget he had a political party to run. And so we will see what happens. So a motion of no confidence is the only way that Pam can survive as a party. If they don't call a motion of no confidence, Pam will not survive as a political organization. And I am certain of that. I am certain of that.
So here's a question. Here's a question that I have here. Pam has 4 seats. CCM has 3 seats. Can they come together and form the government without PLP?
Harris? No. Because Harris is the prime minister and he would have the option of dissolving parliament. There would have to be an election. And Harris is fully aware of that. And that is why he has undermined Pam, so that in case there's an election, he would have many of the Pam supporters. There's a very strong Pam supporter from constituency number 2. And she called in and said she has already shifted from Pam to PLP. And I have picked up a lot of persons who have shifted from Pam to PLP. So eventually, or essentially, Harris has undermined Pam. And Sean is now waking up. But Sean, it is too late. He has already done it. In my own canvassing, I have come across all of that, where the Pam strong supporters have really gone over to PLP, many of them. And of course, some of them are coming to Labour. So Pam is really there.
Tombstone. I'm kind of interested in how uh, the prime minister is undermining the premier. That's kind of
Yes,
I want to know. This is real talk, Connor, so we want to keep it real. What are
and it
some of
is
the
real.
what is some of the actions?
Yes. Right. So some of the actions that are already started, I think if people pay attention close enough, they'll recognize that he has already undermined CCM. So he own partners in his own organization or own coalition in which he's the leader. He's undermining them. He can't help because guess what? He wants to do something that he said only dictators do, and that is to become to have a third term. Third term for Timothy, for me, is dead on arrival. It will not happen. You cannot go around the country tell people any leader who stays more than 2 terms is a dictator, and then at the same time you're asking people to give their third term. After all, we're not living in a banana republic. Our people are educated. You might try to use the state resources to manipulate the situation, but the people will take your resources and vote you out because you have already told them anybody who stays more than 2 terms is a dictator, and we don't want any dictator here in St. Kitts and Nevis.
Got it.
That is by his standard.
You had a question because I have
Um,
some, but if you
well,
have, you could
I have
continue.
one, but
Go ahead.
okay. So one of the things that is being said in the comments is that you should take over the St. Kitts Nevis Labour Party as the leader. We do agree that Dr. Denzel Douglas should have served a great amount of time, but like everything else, we keep moving forward. What are your thoughts of you taking over the party?
Well, I would say that the St. Kitts Nevis Labour Party has one leader at a time, and I definitely
Definitely.
support a leader, right, who is chosen by the people, and that is Dr. Denzel Douglas. The comrades of the party, they have the decisions to make. And when we upgraded our constitution, part of it says electing a leader and electing 2 deputy leaders. And so the people in November, as you go there, they will decide who they would want as a leader. It's only the people in our party can decide that. And so I leave that up to the people in our party, and they will make the decision as they see fit.
Yeah, I think I heard you say that on an interview or in a conversation, but I know you also spoke about the squabble that they're having over prime minister, over being the next prime minister, and you mentioned, there's no focus on the people. There's no focus on the people themselves. It's just focus on self. But still,
Yes.
I would like to know, would you, in years to come, do you have any aspirations to be the prime minister of St. Kitts and Nevis?
Well, well, that is a very good question that you're asking. I think that how I play my politics or how I do politics is that before I got in, people ask for me to do it because there are certain things that you shouldn't push and force. You shouldn't undermine and be treacherous and those things because in the end, it does not serve well. The people, I think, would call for who they think they feel would be the best leader for them. And I really would leave that decision up to the people because I've learned in politics, if you move before the people are ready, you would have done a disservice to yourself, a significant disservice. And so my answer at this time is that this is totally up to the people and especially the comrades in our party to decide. I mean, any politician would have aspirations, but I know how to manage my aspirations. And management of aspiration, very important. If you don't manage them well, you can actually become a monster. And monster will destroy yourself and those around you. So I manage my aspirations very well,
Gotcha.
but I also really wait on the people and to see where the people are. Is Dr. Drew the person that we want? They will determine that, and I respect that.
Gotcha. All right. All right. Um, let's touch on the inequality of lifestyle. I am heavy on your speech. I know you spoke about the inequalities of lifestyles and people suffering and versus a certain class. And we'll wrap up about at 9:15 the latest,
Yes.
2 hours,
Okay.
just in case there are some questions from the audience that we need to field towards you. But let's talk about the inequality of lifestyle. And also, you made mention of the Labour Party actually being a class, I mean, a party for all classes. You said the working class, up to the, the
Upper
top
class and
class.
middle class.
Yeah. So, I mean, can you explain that as well? How is that even possible? You know what I mean? And also, is there any philosophy to the Labour Party? Here in America, we have conservatives and liberal philosophies in our party structures. I'm of the opinion all of the parties in St. Kitts and Nevis are conservative, right? So that's three questions right there. If you need me to go over them
Right.
again, it's fine.
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah.
No, it's okay. I can
Okay.
answer. Well, with respect to in St. Kitts and Nevis, our party is, a democratic party. We are not conservative as the Republicans would be. We are a party that was founded in the working class and work for the working class. What the Labour Party has done is that we have carried people. We are a movement, and we have moved people. We have moved people from the what you call, if you look at the class structure, and we have to admit it, the working poor, and we have tried to carry them into the middle class, and many of them we have carried up even to upper class. But really, the Labour Party has done a great job in eliminating a lot of the class distinction and allow people basic equal opportunities as far as possible. So when I say that, I'm talking about as it exists now, we still want to serve you, the people. For example, my grandmother was who I grew up with, working in the sugarcane field. And I am her grandson, and I'm a specialist in medicine. Labour Party policy allowed a grandmother who is a sugarcane worker, working for a few dollars per week, to have had a grandson to become a specialist in internal medicine. My party should still have a space for me, even though I have gone from one level to the next level. The policies of the party has moved. And so that is why it is a movement. We move people all to all the stages. And so we don't want to always see people working for minimum wage. We don't want to always see people without proper education and proper housing and so forth. As a matter of fact, we work on behalf of the working class to improve those conditions for them and not to keep them in the state that we find them. That is what we work towards. So we want to see working class families and their children move up. That is what we are. Move on, move up, improve your life, better your life, create condition so that you can improve your life. And so that is why we work on the behalf of all our people. And so we are fundamentally working to improve the lives of those who need us the most. But we want to let people know that we represent people on all levels based on their needs. The needs across the spectrum might be different, but we represent them. But what we want to create is opportunities for people. People should have equal opportunities so that they can apply their skill, their art, their know-how, and advance themselves and their families, their communities, and their countries. That, I would say, is fundamental and very important.
Got it. Um,
I think you touched on the conservative part of it. I think I would
you
have
touched
answered
on
that
that.
also.
Yeah.
Yes,
You touched on that, and you touched on
right.
the equality.
Yes,
I kind of want to touch agriculture because you mentioned
yes,
that you like agriculture, and the big thing in
yeah,
agriculture right now is cannabis. Also,
yes,
the other thing I want to touch on is economic diversification because, as we know, the Labour Party is the party that took us from the sugar industry into tourism, right? So, what looking at what happened with the pandemic, what sort of economic diversification can we introduce, so just in case something like this was to happen again, we wouldn't fall on such a strain? What are your thoughts there?
Right. So I think this government totally mismanaged the whole situation. It was totally mismanaged. Why do I say it was mismanaged? It was mismanaged because agriculture, we had seen a significant decrease in agricultural output when there was a symposium held at the Marriott and the director gave the numbers. Even the minister did not realize that agriculture had lost ground. Agriculture is treated as an afterthought. It is not given serious consideration because, as the Prime Minister said during the pandemic, don't worry, the boat's coming. What if the boats could not come? That shows that he does not take agriculture seriously, that he really believes in the boats always coming and never really considers seriously to put policies in place where we can even attempt to feed ourselves. That is total lip service. And so I hope, as you said, Ira, that we would take agriculture seriously, and the pandemic would have taught us we'd better get in the business of knowing how to feed ourselves. That, I think, is fundamental and important. From my own perspective, with respect to the cannabis industry, I hold the point that there is a lot of scope and room for it. There's no reason why we should not get involved in it. I think that the Rastafarian community who suffered the most because of cannabis should be given the opportunity to profit to profit from this industry as this industry opened up as a means of reparations for all the sufferings that they went through because of this plant. That is what I would like to say with respect to that. So I hope that people that they're locked up in jail and their records tarnished because of cannabis. Imagine we in black countries tarnishing our black brothers and sisters records where they can't get loans, can't go to use universities, can't get a visa over marijuana. And in the United States, you have those suburban children, especially um, the white children, who would be caught with cocaine and they would be given a slap on the wrist and it would never show up on their records. And they have an opportunity to pursue education and to correct their lives and to advance. And that is why I believe that that still is hurting a lot of our youths. People are in jail unnecessarily. The justice system has all these cases that could easily be expunged or be done away with, and give our young people a chance. Let's educate them. Let's work with them. But let's do like other countries. Do not tarnish their reputation and their criminal records and so forth because of this. Because in the big European countries and in North America, Canada, they're not doing this to their people. I'm sure if you go ask most politicians in these countries, have you ever come across these type of drugs stronger than marijuana? A lot of them would tell you yes, but they were given second, third, fourth, and fifth chances, or they may not have even been called to their leaders in their own country. So we need to look at that and stop tarnishing our young brothers' names because of a plan. So I believe it should be opened up, but it should be managed properly. I wouldn't want to see people just down the road smoking and stuff like that. I wouldn't want to see that. It still has to be managed and controlled. And then the medical aspect of it, we can benefit from it significantly. Because a marijuana plant growing think it is not the same as a marijuana plant grown in the US. But it's not just the seed, but the environment influences the plant. And we can have
Nice.
our own niche with the type of plant that we can go in target. So I believe that is an industry that we should pursue and let that industry work for us, of course.
I Yes, Dr. Drew, I totally agree with you. I think, like you said, we have tarnished so many individuals' lives because of a dime bag, a little joint. They can't do this and they can't do that. And then you look at the rest of the world and you realize, well, this guy who was in sixth form was a great student, but because he had a
Yes,
dime bag,
yes,
his life went down the drain because of a dime bag. And then you look at
exactly.
other countries and you say, hey, the same dime bag, but this is a president of a corporation, this is a CEO.
Yes,
So we do need to protect our youth. I agree with you. One of the things that I would say is that I hope when we do open for a cannabis industry, whenever it is, the locals get the opportunity to join the industry first. Do not open an industry just because you have an investor from outside that says, I could give you $3 million and then they come in and they take over. I feel like we should open it to our locals first, the people who struggle. Let them get the first shot at it.
I totally agree with that. And I've continued to say that the Rastafarian community should be front in the line. They who suffer the most should benefit the most.
I mean,
Definitely.
Reese has always said we missed our opportunity. Eh? Um,
Oh, we missed
Yes,
a, we
yeah,
missed
he said we missed our
so,
opportunity.
no, so
yes,
we missed a great opportunity, and I would say, I feel that when we decided to do away with sugar, because of how fertile the land is and the quality of sugar we were producing, it shows that we had the opportunity and the land space to start a large scale operation that would have been lucrative.
yes. Very lucrative. Very, very lucrative. I agree with that. You know, some opportunities were lost. I agree that some of it were lost. But in times, time has advanced and people's own position with respect to cannabis and so forth has changed. And I think it would now facilitate the advancement or the introduction of an industry.
I agree. I agree. I think it's about time that we wrap it up.
Yeah,
Any more questions for Dr. Joe? Because I
I
have
have
one more for Dr. Joe
exhausted
before
all
we
my
go.
questions for Dr. Ju for the night. I have one more.
Which
I have
were,
one
which
more.
were a lot.
I have one more. I have one more.
Which were a lot.
You coming back?
I would love to come back, man. You call me again, in some time, and I'll come back.
Okay,
And I'll be happy to have a conversation, man. Anytime.
definitely,
Yeah, man.
definitely.
Thanks.
Dr. Ju, we're gonna give you the
Wait,
opportunity now.
hold on,
Yeah.
Ira. Hold on, Ira. I have one last question for Dr. Joe.
Okay,
As we stand here, we sit here, however, whatever you're doing.
I'm
Dr.
sitting.
Joe, what are your plans going forward? What can we expect from Dr. Joe going forward? What should we be looking out for?
Right. So, what we would look for, I just founded a foundation.
Oh, the Care
And some people,
Foundation.
the Care Foundation.
Yes,
And the
I
reason
was talking
why
to you
I do
about
that,
that.
yes, yes, because there's so much hurt in the country. There's so much hardships that people are going through. That it's really hard for me to just, I give a significant amount of my own resources to, but more help is needed. And I'm hoping that this foundation can really meet a lot of the basic needs that people have. And those basic needs that people have, people losing their homes, people electricity cut off, can't buy pampers for their children. I mean, it's hard. It's hard. It's hard. And so I founded that foundation. I have a good committee heading it. The foundation is properly incorporated to all the legal works. We now launch our Facebook officially tonight. You can look for the Care Foundation. See the pictures. We launched it and we invited all the NGOs and so forth, ambassadors, so to our launch, so that people can see this is a serious foundation that is done in a proper way and the legal way that can help our people here in St. Kitts and Nevis. And so in the next few months, we hope to get some projects off. We actually teamed with another foundation to get water down to St. Vincent, the people of St. Vincent, where we contributed, pallets and pallets of water. I think that was an immediate need that we needed to respond to, even though it was not in our country. It's our fellow Caribbean people who just wanted a glass of water. And we couldn't, we said, man, we should not deny our people a glass of water. And so we contributed in our way, working, of course, with the people of Statia, another foundation, to get the water down to them. We have a number of projects that we will be getting on the way. We have a project with Cuban students during this time of COVID. We know that they need some support in Cuba. And so we have launched a program with Seymour of Island Auto Supply to get resources to the people of Cuba. I've met with the Cuban ambassador to St. Kitts and our own ambassador to Cuba, and we are coming up with ways, and the head of the Cuban alumni here in St. Kitts and Nevis, of how we're going to get the resources to our students in Cuba who, under these trying circumstances, need our help. And so we have program. We start in a food bank we can give basic food to people. At least if you may not have electricity or anything else, at least you should be able to eat some food. At least that. So we are trying to launch. We are in the process now of launching a food bank, and we have another big program which I would not announce yet, but I launched that, I founded that foundation so that we can reach out to our people. And that foundation is non-partisan. We don't care who you vote for, did not vote for. We care about if you have a basic need and we can meet it, we will meet it for the people of St. Kitts and Nevis. Because our people who are suffering should not have to suffer so much. We should really reach out to them and help them. And so that is the aim, really an objective of the foundation. And I'm very, very, very proud of the foundation. And I see you're going to wrap now. I'll just wrap it up. And I would like to say that, thanks to your audience who participated well and, engaged me in support. I engage anybody, I'll speak to anybody. And I'm happy that Tanya was able to forgive me. As we can see, there's a fake meme coming up named Third Term for Tim. I don't engage fake memes. I like to engage people, even people who don't agree with me. But you must say who you are and be who you are and stop hiding behind these fake memes. This fake name, third for Tim, is really fake because Tim would not get a third term. He has deceived the people of St. Kitts and Nevis, undermined the Labour Party. He is now undermining PAM and CCM. I want Tim to know you will soon, or you're already undermining yourself. You have served your 2 terms. You say a dictator is one who stays more than 2 terms. Tim, please don't be a dictator. Pack your bundle and leave. And I would like to say to the people of St. Kitts and Nevis that the St. Kitts and Nevis Labour Party has worked extremely hard in its recent conference in consultation for years with our people to try to really modify and upgrade our constitution. And I would say that our constitution now is strengthened and is in a position now to take our people forward. I want the Labour people to know that this party, which is possibly the oldest active political party in the Commonwealth, that include Australia, India, Canada, and so forth, this party has really been doing good. We have done better by strengthening our constitution, and we are ready now to take on the challenges of the future, not for ourselves, but take on the challenges really to enhance and advance the lives of our people, of St. Kitts and Nevis, whether they're who are living here. And those of our people who are overseas, we would love to see a beautiful St. Kitts and Nevis so that their family who are here would be very, very happy, who are there would be very happy that they're living well. And those who want to return home would, of course, return home to a beautiful country. So we love our people who are here. We love our people who are in the diaspora. The St. Kitts and Nevis Labour Party is strong, will remain strong, and will remain strong to serve the people of St. Kitts and Nevis. And I want to thank Ira and Reese for having me. You have extended another invitation. I'll be happy to join you at another time. I'm available to have discussion at any level about any topic. I am here. I want to thank you all for an engaging discussion tonight. And I see somebody said, think is the Williams had him as is Eliza. Oh, good. So Tanya Williams had cleared up and said Eliza Williams is a fake page. All right, Tanya. Thank you for clearing that for me. With these fake pages going around, you can't be too careful. But I'm happy that Tanya, that's a good person. I look forward to meeting that person. All right, so that is my wrap tonight. I want to thank you all very, very, very much.
All right.
Dr. Joe, we definitely want to thank you for accepting our invitation. We've been going back and forth for some time trying to lock in a date, and you gave me a word and said, hey, I'm available on this day, and we locked it in. So thank you for being here with us, man. It was a great interview. You spent almost 2 hours here with us. And at no point did he shy away from any questions or anything of that nature. I want to thank you for being candid and being open. You know what I mean? So for that, I definitely do tip my hat to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I also would like to say thank you to Mr. Curtis Crook. Curtis was the one who actually put us together to get this done. So Curtis, thank you. Wherever you are, I know you are in the comments. Thank you. Ira, take it away.
Yeah, and feel free to tell your colleagues what a great time you had on Real Talk Corner, and they should come on the corner as well.
I'm going to encourage them to come on the corner, man. Yeah, this is a good corner for me.
It's a good corner, man. It's all about
And look,
goodness.
I made a new friend tonight here. Tanya says I'm gonna meet her. With I made a new friend.
Yes,
Definitely,
man. Yes, man. Yes, man.
definitely.
Yeah.
And good luck to you. And
Tanya's a long time
All right, so
supporter.
I'll definitely do that, and I'll encourage them to come on the corner. I want to thank Comrade Curtis Crook for facilitating tonight's meeting. And Comrade Crook, you are listening. Thank you very much for your excellent work. And thank to you
Thank
and
you, man.
Reese,
Thank
to
you.
Reese
Thank
and
you.
Ira. Keep doing what you're doing.
yeah,
Keep
we ain't gonna
pushing.
stop.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Don't stop.
I just want
All
to say
right.
this
Have
one
a
more.
great night.
Tell the
Yes.
doctor to write a prescription for Douglas to come on the show. That's what.
Okay,
he's
prescription
gonna
will
say.
be.
All right,
Yeah, so we'll get the prescription though.
definitely.
Hey, Dr. Joe, thank you very much, man. You have a good night, all right?
All right,
Yes.
stay blessed.
Yeah. Good night.
Real talk, real talk, real talk.